Okay, hello. So yeah, I'm just prepping for the CodeSandbox stream next week because there was this really weird microphone issue that I have to figure out, and I think it was because I was let's see, CodeSandbox stream next week because there was this really weird. Yeah, there's this humming sound that's happening, and I don't know what it is. Ooh, is it because of the cable? Let's see. Let's see. Oh. Oh, come on. Oh, it seemed to be better. Let's see. Oh, come on. Sorry, I'm just waiting for me to stop talking, looking at my stream. Oh, it seemed to be better. Oh yeah, that definitely fixed it. Yeah, so it was I think it was the cable. It was kind of lying on top behind my, kind of in between I have this new spotlight thing. I have my phone there, and I have my monitor, which is like the Mac monitor. And it was kind of lying behind there. I think there was a lot of, what's it called? Interception. No, not interception, but like, yeah. Whatever. Okay, cool. That's good to get that fixed. And then I have prepped this impact exploration, which I'm really pumped for, where we're actually going to use examples from the V2 CodeSandbox editor and re-implement them using impact. Because we built a lot of stuff as we explored the V2 client, specifically like CodeSandbox has this API, and in the old client it was basically implemented directly into the client itself. But as we saw that we were actually becoming a company, I wanted us to build a package out of our API. So we actually have a package called CodeSandbox, like at CodeSandbox/API, which actually implements all like the typing. It has its own GraphQL implementation, which is actually based on another package I built, which I'm also excited to talk about, which we'll do when we start open sourcing stuff. But anyways, there's a lot of complicated stuff in our API, a lot of like stuff that you would have to re-implement for every client that we build. So that package just ensures that all clients works the same, and you get the typing and everything out of the box. But that didn't happen until quite late. So it's going to be nice to kind of consume that from, kind of look at a fresh perspective and consume that from the start. And then we have picture client. So when we started communicating with our VM process, we did that just quite directly, and we weren't sure how to consume the data and make it compatible with React. We started making implementations in Picture Client to make it easier to consume in React, but the problem wasn't Picture Client. The problem was React and how we were consuming things in React. So I'm super excited to see how we can manage that much better. Anyways, so that's something I'm going to do next week. I'm not sure if it's going to be Tuesday or Thursday, but we'll see. Let's see where. Oh, I guess it's on my personal account. Yeah, and then we have this app that we are refactoring, and let's see. Oh, by the way, am I using the camera A, Christians? Oh, yeah, I guess I am. Anyways, and then we have this other app that we're also refactoring. And I had to make some decisions around how we were going to handle Firebase. So what I've done now is that let's see. So we have our Firebase store, and we have the authentication, we have snapshot updates. So this is to listen to updates to data. So these are the groceries, and then we also have just grabbing the documents and the collections. So in the stream I talked about like how Firebase really doesn't fit into a model of like it's really based on the fact that you're just subscribing to data. So when you call this on snapshot, if you have anything cached on that collection, it will immediately trigger for that cached data. So you'll actually get a set of changes. I think like snapshot. Is it like for each? Isn't that, where do you actually get the type of change? I didn't have an old implement. How did this work? Oh, sorry, doc changes. Snapshot, doc changes. Yeah, sorry. So you'll get a list of changes that you can iterate through. Or you can also just get the data, which is docs. Anyways, so the point is that you don't have a promise. So you can't like say, I want this. Like what I mean to say is that this is generally a problem, like a difficult thing to do, because you have things like RxJS as well. They don't have promises. You're just subscribing to future data, which is the exact same thing that OnSnapshot does. It's subscribing to future data. But what about the initial data and waiting for that initial data? That's a promise. So you kind of have these two things that you need to manage. You have a promise and you have future data. And how do you bring those things together? And it's not obvious how to do that. That's kind of the first question that like people using RxJS says. It's like, yeah, but what about the getting and waiting for the first value? And the same for Firebase. It's like, okay, I can subscribe to the data, amazing, but what about the initial data? How do I wait for that? It's the same thing with on-auth changed. It's like, great, I can subscribe to auth changes, and yeah, it immediately triggers if you're signed in or not. But how do I wait for that? It might trigger synchronously because you have like cache data, but it might not. You don't know when it actually triggers. So again, how do you express that? It's really, really interesting. So for authentication, you could point to auth and current user, I think. There's like a property that shows you what the current state is. But still, it will still trigger a change. Even though you're looking at the current state, it will still trigger the first change. And that would, in the React world, that would trigger a reconciliation, or could trigger a reconciliation that you might not want. So it's like, it's just, it doesn't really fit. It doesn't feel like it fits. Anyways, I don't have like a clear kind of, like it's a philosophical thing almost. Like, how would you actually deal with this in the correct way? But it's interesting because I haven't seen a primitive that does both. That both gets the initial, like you consume a promise initially, but it acts as a subscription. So you can also get future data. And thinking about that, that's actually what I did here with the use cache. Because I was struggling with that, like, again, Firebase and RxJS kind of has a similar problem, or not problem, but like mental understanding challenge. So what I did with this use cache thing was to, how did I do this? Yeah, I called it use subscription cache, I think. So you will kind of, no, was that the thing? Yeah, I can't remember. But you could like define, it's kind of like use query and the likes, where you would insert both. You would both get the initial data in one callback, and then you would subscribe in a second callback. So you would at least co-locate it. But sometimes you just want to grab the data, the initial data. You don't expect there to be like updates to it. And it's, yeah, it's, to me, it's just such a interesting thing to think about. And like, what does this mean in terms of primitives? Like, you have this event emitter and you have a promise, and how do they relate, and how are they different, and could they be the same thing? And yeah, it's fascinating to me. Anyways, so the way this works is that in our grocery store, we go and get the Firebase store, which gives us the ability to go and grab the groceries. And we use a query for that. So there's no like specific ID or anything in this context. It's just that this user has a set of groceries tied to their family. So we don't need to think about IDs and stuff in terms of caching the response. But then we just expose that. So this is a query, and whenever we ask that query to fetch or refetch or whatever, it runs this thing, and it's based on a promise. But then we also want to listen to updates. So that's why we have this on groceries change. And we again give it to user, so it understands what where the data is. And then we have this handle groceries change, and we just set the value of the query. So this is part of primitive in Impact for managing like promises, basically. It doesn't have to be data fetching. It's just managing promises in a good way, both in React and in a store. So we're going to we're going to take a look at how you would consume this query in React. But yeah, this is so interesting to me. And also looking at Angular, for example. Angular is using RxJS, and you can express in Angular. So you can have this thing. You might have products. I think that's a very typical example, where you do this HTTP get something like products, something like that. And this looks weird, right? Because it looks like you're going and grabbing the products, but you're not. You're creating a an observable for products. So as soon as something subscribes to these products, it will trigger the HTTP GET. And this is really a beautiful thing, because and it's funny how RxJS hasn't been able to like get more involved in React, because it's the perfect primitive for React, because React is subscription based. Like, you should not deal with promises in effects. So as an example here, if, oh, what happened here? So if you have my component and you have like a use effect, right? And then if you do like, you might do fetch products here. And then when it's done, you will go and you will kind of set products with the new products. And then you will, of course, have the state for those. Yeah, I'll just write products there, set products. So you do something like this. But the thing is that React doesn't want you to do this, because this isn't subscription based. You should really, to do this correctly, you would have to introduce an abort controller to kind of abort this fetch, so it didn't run this code if the component unmounted. But with RxJS, what you would do is you would just say products subscribe and then set products. You would do it like, oh, you would do it like this. Like, it's so fitting for React to do this, because now you subscribe to these products, and if you happen to unsubscribe in the meantime, this stream won't like resolve itself. Like this callback set products, it won't be triggered. So you won't have this issue of calling and updating state primitives inside components. It's subscription based. That's the thing. But the thing is, here you have to. Here you also have this decoupling. That's my point. So the RxJS isn't there to define state values. It's just there to produce new state values. That's the point. So you have to have somewhere to put the values that RxJS is producing from its stream. And in Angular, you had the same issue. And that's why they create, as I understand it, that's why they created signals in Angular. Because you could rely on only RxJS, because you could do things like, I can't remember the syntax, but it's something like, yeah, I have no idea what the syntax is, but you did, let's just call it data, and you would say like products and then like async, something like this. I'm not sure how they actually deal with when there's no value there yet. Like, how do you deal with the loading state? I'm not sure how that works. But the point is that you can, it's built to handle streams. But it's difficult to understand what's the initial value. So that's, as I understand it, why Angular has signals. So signals in Angular is to just manage state. You can define some state and you can consume it. You don't need RxJS for that. But you can create a signal from an RxJS stream. So you can say like products and then from observable kind of thing. And then you would do like HTTP get products. But then you have to give it an initial value like this. And then you would still do this async, I think. But you would have an initial value there. So you could just immediately show that initial value. Yeah. So what I mean is that they found a way to like signal from observable. They found a way to create a single primitive that combines initial data and future data. Which is great. Like, that's a lot of our state is like this. You have something initially, and then it updates over time. Either that being a single request, or it being a like an actual subscription. For our RxJS, that doesn't matter. It can be like just a single request and it's done, or it can be many requests or many events happening, or notifications, or whatever they call it. And the interesting thing is, like, this is fine. Like, if you have a list of products, you can start out with an empty list, but you might want to show in the UI that you're actually loading, right? You don't have the initial value yet. So what I think is, like, if you were to create a primitive like this, you wouldn't be able to, like, if you were going to create a generic primitive for this, it couldn't just be the initial value, because sometimes you don't know, you can't insert a default initial value. It makes sense for a list, but for example, like CodeSandbox, we need the initial Git status. We don't want a fake Git status. We want to wait for the initial value. So that means if you were going to have like a generic thing, it would need to have like these different statuses and stuff. So is it actually pending? Or maybe you should be able to decide if you don't have, so maybe products would actually be anyways, I'm just spitballing here, just dumping everything that's swirling around in my brain, because there's another aspect of this as well, and that is when. So let's go back to the RxJS thing. Maybe we can use this here. The thing here is, which I also think like signals in Angular fixes things, is that it's like a not global, but it's a scope subscription, which means that if you had multiple of these, it would just run a single subscription, so it wouldn't fetch the data multiple times. But if you had this one above here and you did this, it will actually subscribe. It literally subscribes multiple times to the stream, which means that it triggers a fetch multiple times, as I understand it. So creating that signal just ensures that it doesn't matter how many subscribers there are, there's like one subscriber to the actual stream, which is interesting. But a bigger issue, arguably, is like, how do you consume it? Because this is kind of cool. In Angular, you can just say products and this pipe async, and what it does is that it subscribes and gives you the value. And like, how would you do that in React? If you were going to have a primitive like this, how would you consume the value and subscribe to it at the same time? I don't think that's actually, like, at least the primitive itself, that wouldn't work. You would have to create a hook around it, because you want to grab the value and you want to subscribe to it. So it would kind of be use observable, and then you would kind of give it the stream, and or like, let's call it like stream signal or whatever, and then you could kind of say, give me the current value, and then you would have stream signal, subscribe, set value, return value. Because yeah, but the funny thing is, what if you don't want to run? What if you don't want this fetch to happen? You just want to look at the current value. Right? You just want to look at the value, and maybe later you want to do the fetching. How would you do that? Like on an on-click, you would do the fetching. And the only way to trigger this fetch is to subscribe to it. But that doesn't make any sense. Like, if you start a subscription when you click, where do you put the disposer? It's really interesting. I don't. So I understand that RxJS is great for, like just as I explained here, like being the subscription of values, so that you can, like, it handles race conditions. You can say that. Let's go back to the example. Like, you can say that when you use promises in React, like I showed there, like this, you create a race condition, and the race condition is the component unmounts before the promise resolves. That's a race condition. And RxJS handles that beautifully, right? It just works. And that's what RxJS is really good at. It's handling those race conditions. But there are like certain scenarios that I don't quite understand how you would solve with RxJS. Just being like the button click. You want to fetch something when you click the button. Well, to fetch something, you have to subscribe. But if you subscribe, you need to also dispose of it. And then it's like it's solvable. You could have like a ref that holds the subscription. And then you would like dispose, look at the ref, and if it has a disposer, you would run the disposal. But it's weird to me. Anyways, what I really wanted to do here is to just see if this actually works. Oh, I think I have to restart. I moved some files around. Let's see. Okay, so we have our shopping list again. And I think, if I remember correctly, well, we can delete this use view stack. We have our dashboard. And we have dashboard content. Let's see. Yeah, here we are. And we talked about how we want to pre-fetch the data. So I wanted to just try fetching the data and see if we can get that running. So all we really need to do here is groceries store equals use store groceries store. Oh. And what we're going to do is we're going to groceries query. We're going to point to the groceries, and we're just going to yeah, I guess we can fetch. We're just going to fetch the groceries when we render this out. And let's just look at the, I'm just going to see if we actually get the data. That's what I'm gonna prep, so that we don't spend time on that next week in the other stream. Oh, yeah, I think, where's our, I think I forgot one thing. Page container. User store. Yeah. We need our groceries. Oh, didn't I add it here? Here we go. We need to add our groceries store. To our provider, because the grocery store takes a user, so we need to add it to our provider. And then we say grocery store, you are also going to get session store state user. So both of these stores now gets the initial user, and that should at least handle the initial error. Oh, nice. Oh, do I have my phone? Oh, let's see. Let's see. Family scrum v2.vercel.app. Is that the? Oh, here we are. I'm just going to add a grocery just to see that it appears. And actually, it should now live update. Actually, milk. Add. Oh, look at that. It that's nice. It actually appeared. Oh, interesting. ID is undefined. Why is ID undefined? That's interesting. That is interesting. Maybe we could take a quick look at that. I'm just going to see. Is it still undefined? Oh, interesting. Let's take a quick look at that. So this would be the Firestore converters. Oh, this is to Firestore from data ID. Let's look at the data. Data. Oh, interesting. Why doesn't it? Oh, I think I know. This is snapshot.id. That's the actual ID. Nice. Okay, then it also makes more sense here. Like we just return, yeah, the actual data, not the ID. Cool. So now I guess we get the actual ID of the thing. Nice. Cool. Yeah, but this is good. So now we actually have, where's the dashboard content? Now we actually have, now we're actually fetching the groceries. And the cool thing about this is it's not blocking. If I did suspend there, it will block. Well, we don't want to do that. The big question is, what do we do here? Do we show 0, or do we show like it's, if it's pending, it doesn't know yet? We could do that. So we would do status. If it's fulfilled, we'll do groceries query value dot length. Oh, or we say just like this. But what's really cool about this is that since we're doing this from the store, is that we're starting the fetch here, which is non-blocking. And if you happen to click this go to shopping before it resolves, it will just, like, it won't fetch again or anything, even though we do like another fetch inside the groceries component, or maybe we would do a suspend there, because we don't actually want to show the list until it's actually done fetching the data, is that you get this like really optimistic flow. So if you, for some reason, were really quick to click groceries, we would show a small spinner. But we did start the data fetching immediately when you loaded the dashboard. But if you spend like a second or two before you tap it, then it's already done and you don't see the spinner. And so you kind of see this flexibility you need when consuming data. Sometimes you want a blocking behavior. Sometimes you don't want that blocking behavior. And this just allows you to do that, which I really, really like about this query thing. Cool. And that's also what I like about the API of query, is that if you compare it to like use query and the others, they have like just one function and then use options to define its behavior. And that's really tricky with typing, but it's also very implicit, the behavior. But if you look at impact here and docs API, yeah, you look here on query, you have behavior by method name. So if we just ignore set value and get value, like you have fetch is like you go fetch it, but we're like subscribing to its state. So is it pending, is it fulfilled, or is it rejected? Suspend is the blocking behavior where it only returns when it's fulfilled, where you would need like a suspense boundary and an arrow boundary to handle the other states. And then refetch, regardless of you using fetch or suspend, refetch will then update the state of the query. And what's interesting about this is that on fetch, you'll still be resolved, but it has an is refetching property. While on suspend, nothing happens. It's resolved until the new promise resolves, and then it updates the data. So fetch has this capability, since it's looking at the state of the query, to also evaluate when it's refetching the data. While suspend is this like very brute, I only care about the resolved value, which makes sense in some scenarios, but not in other scenarios. And being able to like just play with what you need. Yeah, here you can see we get the count here. But yeah, it's kind of weird that it should probably just be 0. Where are you? Dashboard content. Let's just do 0. Cool. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating, these things. Why does it have all this stuff? I don't need all that stuff, do I? Okay, I do need that stuff. oh, of course. These were the parentheses, not in code, but around the actual number in the UI. Okay, cool. But this is great. So now we're prepped for continuing implementing this, and we're also prepped for the other session, which I'm going to do with a colleague. We're going to talk about how we deal with, as you can see here, we have our commit panel, we have our create PR button, which should actually run a commit, but it should also generate a commit message if eligible to do that. When I actually do click this, you see we're also having git status up here. So it's like we're consuming this state all over the place, and it's going to be interesting to see how we solve this with impact, because this is like really to the core of what challenges that we have, just in different colors and shapes. Cool. I think that's all I had time for. I had the youngest is waking up very shortly, so we have to be we have to regroup as parents and embrace ourselves for the rest of the day. We actually had I've been using this stream to give this family status kind of thing. It's more to reach out to parents, especially parents with smaller kids, how incredibly rough it can be. But it's nice to see how things change. When it's rough, you feel like it's going to be like that forever, but then it suddenly changes. So we had this really weird scenario where our oldest was out and then our youngest was just really calm. He's in 3 even, so he has a lot of energy, but he was super calm, just wanted to sit on the couch between my partner and me reading a book, which is insane to us. It was such a nice moment, but that's not the normal thing. But it kind of makes you think that things are actually improving, and they are. But when I do talk to parents who has older kids, it doesn't really get better. You just change out the problems. But I when I hear that, I still argue that yes, you do change out the problems, but the thing that you get is more calm. You don't have the constant screaming, yelling, and it feels like it doesn't stop sometimes, and you get more time to yourself and stuff like that. So even though you change out some of the problems, and maybe some of them even becomes more difficult to do, at least it's a higher order function of your brain that's dealing with that. That's a nice way to put it. Because when you have small kids, it's your reptile brain is constantly super stressed because of all the noise and all the irrational behavior and everything. Anyways, so shout out to any parents. We are amazing. Anyways, we'll talk later, and I hope the audio stayed good, and we're ready to roll next week. Cool. Bye for now.